Welcome to the Golf Improvement Podcast, episode 65.
Welcome to the podcast for golf lovers and enthusiasts who are looking to take their games to new heights. Dedicated to custom club fitting, short game improvement, and effective practice to improve your golf game. This is the Golf Improvement Podcast with your host, Tony Wright.
Hello, this is Tony Wright from Game Improvement Golf in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, with the Golf Improvement Podcast, dedicated to bringing you useful information on custom club fitting, short game improvement, and effective practice techniques to take your game to new heights. Earlier this year, I did a podcast interview with now a good friend, Stephen Yellin, the developer of the Fluid Motion Factor program, to help golfers consistently access their best golf swings. I have been, since that time, since I've been corresponding with Stephen, reading his very interesting posts on his Facebook page, and so I thought I'd bring him back, and I'm glad today to let you hear from him an update about some of his most recent Fluid Motion Factor successes and findings. I know you're going to enjoy this interview. Well, welcome to the Golf Improvement Podcast, and today we have a return engagement from somebody that really is doing a lot of interesting things. Stephen Yellin, the developer of the Fluid Motion Factor program, he teaches it at the David Ledbetter Academy, but he's also teaching it around the U.S. and around the world, and I think things are... You know, my impression, Stephen, is things are really taking off in the last year for you, and so it's neat to kind of get back and talk about some of the things that have been happening. So, welcome today.
Thank you, Tony, and I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to be on your show again.
Well, great. Well, you have been, I believe, really busy in the last half year or so with talking to a lot of teams and golfers about fluid motion and maybe you can bring us up to date a little bit about some of the things, you know, that you can share in terms of, you know, some of the things you've been doing.
Well, I've worked with a lot of teams, college teams, over the past year. In fact, last month I made a West Coast tour, college tour, worked with 3 teams, Seattle University, men's and women's team, and Oregon State and University of Oregon for the second time.
Yeah.
And just teaching them how to drink the fluid juice.
Right. And I also noticed a bunch of individuals, but so you've been busy.
Yeah, I just spent the weekend with Robert Allenby, the Australian golfer,
right,
who is tremendously talented. Had a few challenges this year, but he absolutely loves the program. In fact, 2 weeks ago, he played in a European and Australian tour event in Fiji, and he has missed, he's only made 2 out of 21 cuts the past year, but in the tournament's first tournament he took the program in, he had a T12, so that was great.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Well, as you've been working with teams and groups, you know, can you talk a little bit about what tends to be sort of the light bulb moments they have in terms of applying the fluid motion factor principles to their games?
Everyone has the same light bulb awareness. And, you know, Tony, this whole program, and I'll tell you what it is in a second, I'll just preface it a little bit. This whole program, really the last iterations in the past 5 or 6 years were based on conversations that every year I have with a neuroscientist by the name of Fred Travis, Dr. Fred Travis.
Right.
And Fred worked 5 years with the Norwegian Olympic Athletic Committee and published his findings. And his findings were quite fascinating, though common sense. It said that athletes perform better when their brain physiology is more integrated. Well, since the brain controls the body, that's sort of common sense. But one thing that Fred said about 6 or 7 years ago. When he said this, there was an explosion in my brain.
Okay.
A nuclear explosion in my brain. And he said, Stephen, muscle memory doesn't break down. Muscle memory does not break down. And the implications for golfers with this are tremendous. It means that once you've grooved a motion, and anyone playing on a D1 golf team has grooved their motion, or else they would not be playing.
That's right.
What it means is that once you have grooved your motion, means you go to the range, you drop a bucket of balls, you're feeling no pain, you're hitting the ball solid. At that point in time, your motion can't break down. What breaks down when you don't swing well is your ability to access what you already own. But accessing what you already own is the slipperiest road in all of sports. It defines careers. So when I go and work with these teams, the program is divided into 4 phases. Actually, there's a fourth phase now, Tony, since you've been through. There's a 4th set of fluid cues. I hope one day to expose them to you, or teach them to you. But
yeah.
The purpose of the first set of fluid cues, which are just mental cues you do that set up the conditions to access what you already own, they prove beyond a shadow of a doubt to these players that muscle memory doesn't break down. And that is such an eye-opener to a golfer, whether it's a college golfer, a top amateur golfer, or a professional golfer. Because I didn't know that muscle memory didn't break down until Dr. Travis told me. They're under the impression that they have to reinvent the wheel on every shot. They've got to go through their checklist. They've got to go in and do this, because if they don't, they may not access their swing. Well, this is totally fallacious. It has nothing to do with reality. It has nothing to do with how fluid motion is produced. It completely, 100%, flips their understanding of golf upside down, and all of a sudden makes golf much easier than they thought it could ever be.
So their confidence level just jumps then. Once
it jumps.
They're able to, yeah.
Can you imagine that? Okay, can you imagine knowing that once you've grooved your motion, it's called the junior developmental process. They spent years and years doing that. That is their money in the bank. And it's like saving money in a savings account. Once you have $10,000 in the bank, you go to the bank, that money is always available. It's exactly the same with muscle memory. Once you've grooved your motion, that motion is always available. You do not have to reinvent the wheel. You just have to make sure, which is the program that I teach, to access what you already own.
Yeah. That was the kind of experience I had when I did the class with you about a year ago too. And you immediately learn, and then when you don't access it, what you get, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Right.
Exactly.
Well, and I didn't mention at the beginning. Some of my questions today, your Facebook posts on your site, and I'm going to put a link in the show notes to this. You amplify a lot of things that are part of the program. You sort of talk about things that are almost in some ways just as important or additional to what you teach, and
yes.
and share a lot of things, which I think is a lot of fun. And as I said, I'm going to put the links
yes.
there. But what in one of the Facebook posts you said this statement, and it's a part of one of your books, actually, part of it. The quality of emotion is dependent on the quality of the gap. It makes a lot of sense to me now that I've been through all these things, but can you talk a little bit about that statement? And it relates, just as much to golfers as to anybody performing some type of a sporting activity, right?
Yes, I will be delighted to talk about that. So let's call the gap in golf the moment before you hit the ball, okay? You could call the gap in tennis as you're waiting for a shot, or you can call the gap in basketball the moment before you release a shot. But in golf, let's call the gap the moment before you hit the ball. And there's also another gap in golf, and that is at the top of the swing before there's a pause there, right? But let's talk about the gap before you pull the trigger. So we can define that as a gap, correct, Tony?
Correct, right.
Okay. So my whole program is based on answering one question. How is fluid motion produced, and why does it break down? How is it produced, and why does it break down? Everything that I do and I say and I teach are like hubs or like spokes on a wheel connected to the hub answering that question. Now, the brain physiology loves wholeness. It loves wholeness. It's weakened when a part overshadows the whole. What Fred Travis discovered is when the brain physiology is operating as an integrated whole, that the movements become much more precise, more effortless, and therefore more effective. Now, a part overshadows the whole, meaning that if you're over the ball and you are thinking in a very loud way, don't hit it left, don't hit it right, don't hit it long, don't hit it short, get the club in this position, let's birdie, let's not bogey, then what happens is that wholeness is broken. Wholeness is broken before you even pull the trigger, because one thought is overshadowing other thoughts. Now, if wholeness is broken in the gap, let's say your misses left and there's OB on the left. So you're thinking, don't hit it left, don't hit it left. Well, wholeness is broken in the gap, that moment before you pull the trigger. If wholeness is broken in the gap, why do you think you have really any legitimate chance of experiencing wholeness during the swing? You don't. You're just wishing and praying.
Yeah.
But if you've experienced wholeness in the gap, now wholeness is not the absence of parts, it's the togetherness of all the parts. So you can be thinking whatever you want. You can be thinking don't hit it left or get the club in this position or don't hit it long or don't hit it short. But all those parts have to be operating from wholeness. So if you've experienced wholeness before you pull the trigger, you have an excellent chance of experiencing wholeness during the shot. Now, the second place that wholeness can be broken is at the top of the swing, because that's when you're making the move to actually hit the ball. So that transition is crucial in a golf swing. So if you have not experienced wholeness in the gap at the top of the swing, hey, good luck. Good luck, bucko. Let me know how it works, how that tempo feels, and how the transitions work. So it's the moment of activity in sports that is more important than the moments of activity, because the quality of the inactivity actually determines the quality of the activity.
That's a fascinating thought. And and as you talk to, one of the main elements of when you're experiencing fluid motion is time slowing down too, and there's got to be some connection with that, right?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, right.
100%. When the mind experiences wholeness, then the time actually is generated in any human being by neurons in the prefrontal cortex, which is the CEO of the brain, and neurons in the motor system. Now, when the prefrontal cortex goes online, the neurons in the prefrontal cortex will overshadow the neurons in the motor system, and you have to experience time moving quickly. The only way the prefrontal cortex or the intellect can go online is if wholeness is broken.
Yeah. Wow. Well, let's move on to another one of the things that you had in one of your Facebook posts. And I have to say, this is one of the things, particularly in putting, that I use a lot, or at least sort of a relative concept. You talked about the story in the World Cup soccer finals of when Germany played Argentina. Was it 4 years ago? I can't remember how long ago.
I think it was about 3 years ago. Yeah.
But tell rather than me telling the story, let you tell it and talk about it, how it relates, maybe in particular to putting improvement.
Okay, so they're playing the World Cup. It's the biggest sporting event in the world. Over I don't want to say billions, but over 1 billion people are watching it, right?
Yeah.
So Germany's playing Argentina. So the German coach is a very clever coach, very well respected in the world. They call it football, in Europe. They don't call it soccer.
Right.
But I'll call it soccer because football to me is, Tom
Brady.
Brady.
What it is. That's right.
Okay. So the coach of the German team meets with his players before, the biggest sporting event of their lives. It could change their lives professionally and financially. And he sits down with them and he says, guys, there's a chance you could lose this game tomorrow. Well, that's a very interesting statement. The Argentina coach, I would imagine, would sit down with his players and say, guys, there's no way you can walk off the field and lose this game tomorrow. Now, you've got two completely different approaches. So what are the effects of the words of the two coaches? And again, I'm just hypothesizing what the Argentina coach would say. But, being Latino, having that emotion, and having that pride, because they're playing in Brazil, which is right next to Argentina. So all of Latin America is rooting for Argentina. So what are the effect of the coach's words on their players? Well, the German coach was just being honest. Because after all, there is a chance they could lose, right?
Sure.
But the effect that has is to have a very high level of acceptance of the result of the game before it starts. Now, this is counterintuitive because no one wants to admit that they could lose. Now, let's go to putting, okay? Someone has 8-foot putt for birdie, let's say to win the tournament, and change their lives, okay? I know Dave Stockton had that in the finals of the PGA Championship. He had a 10 or 12-foot putt to win the tournament and change his life. He wins a major. If someone has a low level of acceptance, which means there is no way that I am not going to make this putt, what effect does this have on the brain physiology? Because after all, it's the brain physiology which controls the muscles. Well, the effect of a low level of acceptance can do something that is not very positive during the actual stroke. Because you have such a low level of acceptance, I have to make this putt. I can't miss this putt. Oftentimes during the putt, the CEO of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, goes online to compare what you are actually doing during the putt to what you anticipated doing, which is, of course, there's no way I'm not going to make this putt. And in doing this comparison, the cerebellum, which actually controls the tempo and the pressure on the grip and the transitions during the putt, starts to shut down. So you don't control the distance as much, as you don't control the distance as well as you would like to control the distance. But if you do the opposite, which is completely counterintuitive.
Oh, yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Meaning you're behind the ball and you have accepted the results of this putt. I accept the results of this putt. If it goes in, great. If it doesn't go in, great. If I have the right line, great. If I have the right speed or I don't have the right speed, great. I accept it. Then what happens is that during the putt, the prefrontal cortex, which is the killer in a golf swing, the intellect, has nothing to chew into. So the cerebellum, which is actually controlling the motion, can work more effectively. And guess what? You have a much better chance of making that putt.
There was it made me think about another story I heard once. David Cook, you've heard of him, right? That I think, and he worked with Stan Utley. And Stan Utley, the tournament that changed his entire life, I think, was the Chattanooga Open. It was, I think, a PGA event. And, he sort of came out of nowhere, right? And he had a 12-foot putt, 12-foot downhill breaking putt. And his thought before the putt is, the world is not going to end if I miss this. Or something like that, right? And he always talked about that, and David Cook always talked about that.
That's right.
And his write-ups of it. That's right. Exactly the same thing.
it's not like you're going to war in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Right.
You're not going to do a tour of Iraq, okay, if you miss the putt. But it's easier said than done if you're a professional athlete and your career is based on performance. I tell you what, it's more challenging to have a high level of acceptance than a low level of acceptance. But that's what separates the men from the boys out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you're getting to teach a lot of these folks that you're talking to get in that kind of a frame of mind. It's
yes, sir. I love it.
Yeah, pretty exciting.
I love it.
Well, before we started today, you talked about some new videos that you're going to do, and the starting point of that was actually another Facebook post where you talked about, if you ever wrote another book, it would be It's Just the Opposite: How Turning Your Understanding of Golf Upside Down Will Flip Your Game Right Side Up, which is an awesome title. It certainly. The book writer, the book editors out there would love a title like that, but I know you're not going to do that right away. But talk about some of the concepts that you're thinking about for this video series related to that title. Well,
the first concept we already talked about, which means that you do not have to reinvent your swing. It's just the opposite. I see guys and girls on the ranges in Orlando, and it's absolutely littered with this all over the place. They keep practicing their swing over and over. I mean, they spend 5 or 6 hours out there. It's almost like they're waiting to miss a shot to see what they can work on. Oh, really? Seriously? That's what you're doing? Don't you know that muscle memory doesn't break down? So what that does, it puts you in such a debilitating situation when you play golf, because you always think that you have to reinvent the swing. It's just the opposite. Once the money is in the bank, it's not going anywhere. Another just the opposite principle is how you practice. Now, how does someone practice? Well, they practice with this report card mentality. They hit the target. Oh, I got an A. Now they missed the target. Oh, I got a C. Oh, I got it close. Oh, that's a B minus. Okay, I made the putt. Oh, that's an A. Oh, I missed it. Oh, that's a C. Oh, it lipped out. Okay, that's a A minus over a B plus. So when you use concrete criteria like this, when you use report card mentality like this, criteria like this, you are culturing the mind to be concrete. The mind is weakened when it's concrete, because when it's concrete, that means some part is overshadowing another part. You are not experiencing wholeness. But you got a big tournament coming up on Friday. All week long, you're practicing using concrete mentality, concrete criteria, which cultures the mind to be concrete. If your mind is concrete when you tee it up on Friday, good luck, because the mind has to be abstract. It has to be abstract in order for you to access your muscle memory. But you've been practicing the whole week using concrete criteria. Why do you think your mind is all of a sudden going to go magically into abstraction when you tee it up on the first tee? You know what I tell you what that's like, Tony. And you know this example. That's like living in a city you don't want to live in. Okay, it's Vegas, baby. You're at the blackjack table. You are at the blackjack table on the first tee on Friday, and you have no idea what card you're going to get. You hope you get blackjack, but hey, Vegas wins, and that's why it's still in existence. So good luck.
Yeah. Any other, maybe one other piece from what, other concepts that you're going to share in some of those videos?
There is something that I call umbilical cord consciousness.
Ooh.
This is very... Okay,
yeah.
This is a very interesting term, umbilical cord consciousness, which means, and I'll tell you how this came up, okay? So I'm teaching a very talented player who's on the LPGA Tour, didn't play that well, has to go back to Q school, qualified for the third stage. She's playing in 3 weeks. So she comes up and sees me, and we're on the range, right? So she takes out her driver, which has been giving her some challenges, and she hits a bad drive. A medium. I mean, it's playable, but it's not, a highlight reel drive, okay?
Yeah.
And the drama on her face was unbelievable. Okay, then she hits another drive, and the drama on her face was, it was like the opening of a Broadway play that's not going so well. So I turned to her and I said, let's say her name is Mary. I said, Mary, what do you think has to do with if you miss a shot on the range versus how you play on the course? What is the connection? Well, there's no connection, because the range, you have 300 balls with no ramifications, and on the course you have one ball with tremendous ramifications. So it's almost like you're playing two different sports. So if you connect, if you have this umbilical cord consciousness, this connectedness, with every time you hit a shot on the range, oh, I'm a good player. Every time you hit a bad shot, oh, I'm a lousy player. What are you doing? You're really setting yourself up for mediocrity, because, first of all, you're making your mind concrete. And second of all, it's a little delusional to think how you hit on the range is going to dictate how you play on the course. Because how many times has someone had a miserable ranged session and played outstanding? And how many times has someone had a fantastic range session and played lousy? Yeah. So it's just the opposite. It's two different sports. So don't think it's the same sport.
I can't tell you the number of times when I've walked, I play in casual groups and stuff, and sometime I'll walk up on a Sunday or something, and, I like to hit a few balls before, but walk up to the tee, right, and say, okay, don't worry about it, just go, and get results that, at least I wasn't expecting, right? And just allow yourself to trust what's in there. Yeah.
I'll tell you a quick story. There's a baseball pitcher Major League pitcher who announces for MLB.com. His name is Jim Cott. You ever hear Jim Cott?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So Jim Cott missed the Hall of Fame by like 5 votes. Okay. He won 200, I believe, in 278 or 268 games. Just ridiculous. I think you have to, if you have 280, you're guaranteed anything underneath that. So Jim went through the program, and he said, he told me an interesting story after he went through the program, which is directly related to what we're talking about. He said, Stephen, when I had a mediocre or lousy pen before a game, they have a pitch count pen, they would warm up before the game. Yeah. I usually had a very good game. When I had an outstanding pen before a game, I usually had a lousy or mediocre game. Now, isn't that interesting? Yeah. Because what happens when you had a really good pen, what was his level of acceptance? It was very low. Well, I threw well in the pen. Of course, I'm going to throw well in the game. When he had a lousy pen, well, I don't have my stuff today. I don't have it today. I'm probably not going to throw well. So he has a low level of acceptance. Okay, whatever. Just go out there, and what happens to his game? He has an outstanding game.
Well, and if you look at the tour pros too, you hear so many stories, and of course they have fabulous short games, right? But how many times do they only get up and down? Do they only hit 6 fairways or something, right? And still score. Now, some of that is their skill level, but maybe it's the acceptance level too.
Exactly. Every pro needs to understand how fluid motion is produced. And this is why very talented players go sideways for 20 years and have a very mediocre career, is because they're always working on a part. Oh, if I can only do this, if I can only get it like this, oh, I could do this. This has stifled talented players that really deserve to have a successful career and really had not too much of a career. So this question, that's why I'm doing this video series, and maybe one day I'll turn it into a book. And this is also why the program has been successful, because it mirrors identically. And in many ways, it's not even my program. I may be clever, but I didn't come up with how fluid motion is produced. This is nature.
Yeah.
But this concept of wholeness, every PGA pro should have it as the wallpaper with that word on their cell phone. So every time they make a call, they see the word wholeness.
Yeah. Or maybe we need it in more of our life experiences too, but that's another
it's another story.
That's right. Well, we started out talking about some of the things you've been doing. What have been some of your most recent most satisfying experiences as you've been working a lot with folks?
Brad Dahlke getting to the finals of the U.S. Amateur.
Really? Okay. Yeah.
I was there with him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. University of Washington winning the NCAA National Championship. Robert Allenby, after only making 2 out of 21 cuts, T12 last week in Fiji. And I'm about to work with another player whom I can't say, who everybody knows. So we'll see who won a major championship. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Well, my perception is just things have just blossomed because word of mouth is always the way things go, isn't it?
Word of mouth, people are always looking for the latest and the greatest, and because golf is so challenging, and any method to have them become more consistent, is worth its weight in gold. So in December, I'm going to have the opportunity to be one of the principal speakers at the NCAA College Coaches Convention in Las Vegas, over 200 women college coaches. So they're going to have an opportunity to hear about this program. Many of them already know about it, and the specialness of experiencing wholeness, and hopefully that'll stir a lot of interest as well.
And as much for your well-being as much as it is for people getting to play their best and reaching their potential. That's exciting for all of us.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Well, any final words then? Another great interview today with you. I really enjoyed it. Hey, this is like a second level certification for me. So.
Yeah, no, there is. Since you went through it, there is some added material. So you should be. When I videotape some things for the certification program, I'll send it to you. But I'm always trying to sort of make the program better, try to make it, where players are more consistent. And every 6 months or a year, there is a breakthrough, and there has been a breakthrough in the past 6 months. So that's always exciting. But, any final word? Well, come and see me in Orlando.
There you go.
At Champions Gate, you will become more consistent. Your good shots will become better. Your not so good shots will not be as bad. You'll enjoy the game. You'll feel lighter after you play, not like you went through a war where you're mentally and physically exhausted. And as you know, Tony, it doesn't take too long for someone to have this experience.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, Stephen, I'm going to put links again in my show notes to your site, but I'm also going to put a link to your Facebook page.
Okay, great.
I think people will just get a continual, as you say, a dose of the fluid juice, right? As you write little things there, and also links to your 2 books. And I'm sure
great.
You'll put links to your videos there too as they come out. So that's going to be exciting.
Yeah. I'm looking forward. I just bought this really hotshot Canon camera, so I'm looking forward to making some enjoyable and instructive videos.
Such a deal. Well, thanks again, Stephen. Take care.
Thanks, Tony. Really enjoyed it.
Okay. Bye now.
www.gameimprovementgolf.com.
Well, thanks again, Stephen. This was, as I said in the interview, was like a sort of a mini certification update to me, and I'm sure all of you enjoyed what he had to say. See the show notes for links to the Fluid Motion Factor website, to the 2 excellent books that Stephen has published, but also a link to his Facebook page. I highly recommend that you like his Facebook page and read some of his terrific posts on there. I want to mention before I move on to telling you what's coming up in 2 weeks that I now have more than 1,000 followers to my website. This is something I've been hoping for quite a while now. I know many people have a lot more followers on their sites, but for me, this is a big vote of confidence that a lot of folks are enjoying the information that I'm providing to them. So thanks for that. Well, that's it for today. In a little more than 2 weeks, I'll be traveling to Columbus, Georgia for the 11th Annual Association of Golf Club Fitting Professionals Roundtable. My friend Dave Honke, Master Professional Club Fitter and Assistant Golf Coach at Indiana University, will be on my show talking about some of the things that he will present at the roundtable, and I know you're going to enjoy hearing from him again. See you in 2 weeks.
Game Improvement Golf, your source of information and inspiration to become an exceptional golfer now. www.gameimprovementgolf.com